Well, that's actually what Jacques Derrida said, the most famous of the postmodernists. That's why Derrida is such a invasive force. He said, well, you can't have a society without marginalizing. It's like, well, that's true. It's true, comma, but, ... right? But the fact that you can't have a society without marginalizing doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a society. And it doesn't mean that the only reason that society exists is to marginalize. And that was Derrida's claim. That's what makes him so... He's absolutely pathological to the core, Jacques Derrida. And apart from his claims that all we do is trade power games, because that's another one of his claims, his other claim is that the purpose of categorization, the purpose of society is to marginalize. And that's absolutely absurd. The purpose is so that we can all play a moderately mediocre but productive, homogenous social game. Is it perfect? Well, obviously not. Does it require the sacrifice of individuality? Yes. Is some of that sacrificed individuality valuable? Absolutely. What's the alternative? No society. Well, I don't think so. That doesn't seem like a very good alternative to me. Or maybe some sort of egalitarian utopia. Well, yeah, we had 100 years of that, and 100 million deaths as a consequence. And so maybe not that either. What we have right now is a flawed system. But it's the best flawed system that anybody's ever come up with. And of course it marginalizes people. How could it not? You know, if kids organize themselves in a playground to play hide and go seek, they've marginalized all the kids that wanted to play tag. Obviously. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't come to a consensus and go ahead and play a game. At least they're bloody well playing a game that you know, pretty much everybody has access to.
I think marginalized is a lot of times associated with oppression. That term marginalized, and it's not necessarily the case. And I think that society as a whole and civilization is sort of a work in progress. We're working all this out, and that's one of the beautiful things about you being able to discuss these things on your YouTube page, as opposed to just having to battle it out inside the echo chamber of the universities. You're able to express this stuff out in the world where people like me that are 49 years old that aren't in college have a chance to read this and see like, wow, what is this guy going through over there at the University of Toronto? And then you start to examine the laws and you start to look at what's going on here. And this egalitarian utopia idea, it's beautiful in its concept that we should all be able to get along and everything should be equal. The problem is it defies human nature. It defies the 200, 300,000 years of DNA that we have bouncing around inside of our bodies that demand certain types of behavior. And I think it's so important that we discuss these things. And I think that society and civilization as a whole, this thing that is ultimately in this growing state, this constant state of improvement and objective interaction, I mean, there has to be some sort of discussion.